All right. So without further ado, I give you Professor and screenwriter Matthews.
Hey guys, I'm so happy to see you. I haven't seen you in a whole semester, so it's fantastic to be here. In terms of the idea, it's I was home December 2019. I just got an inkling to go home for a month. Like something was like, Monique, go home for a month. And I did. And I've never been home that long. Like when you see the movie, I'm very much like Jasmine, our protagonist. Like I do a couple of days in New York. And prior to teaching at SMC in another life, I was a magazine writer. So I would literally sometimes fly in and out of New York, and my family may see me, they may not. So that wasn't too far from home. And I was just walking the streets and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a movie. It was a particularly white winter in New York City. And it was just, when you see the opening of the film, that's literally what I saw, and the movie came to me from there.
So I have the opening. So should I go ahead and play it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Mute myself. So after I screen share, let me know if you can see it. Can everybody see it? The screen? All right, here we go. This is just the opening scene that kind of sets the scene for the film. So I was gonna pause it there so we don't give too much away. But so continue. So after you thought of it, then what happened?
Well, I mean, you hear a lot about Christmas movies, and particularly like Christmas movies for Hallmark. And it's always about, this high-powered exec who is, working too much, and she goes back home to her small town. And no, I've never seen Harlem as a small town, and it really is. I mean, with the great migration of African Americans who left the South, primarily North and South Carolina and Georgia, many of them moved to New York. That's what happened to my family. And as a result, Harlem is very Southern. So, I mean, that's why the food, the cuisine, people know about that. And I think this is the first film, like I've gotten a lot of feedback, like you're showing Harlem like the people who live there know. It's like, it's not just, it's rough, it's tough. It is that, but it's also the architecture is beautiful. The people are beautiful, and you have neighbors who really care about you. And so it's just like my mother was telling me on Facebook, somebody contacted her, was like, hey, this girl from St. Nick, I grew up in St. Nicholas Friday, this girl from St. Nick wrote the movie. And she's like, that's my daughter. So it's like, it became a very like family thing. Like when people in Harlem like found out about it, it was all over, like it was just spreading like wildfire on Facebook. So it was what you see there in our opening image that you just frankly don't see a lot on screen.
Wonderful. So after you thought of it, how did you get it made by Hallmark?
I had a meeting with another network, and I got the best no ever. And so a lot of times I tell my students, and if you know me, I'm pretty positive. Like if you get a no doesn't necessarily mean never. It can mean a bunch of different things. And so I was like, the executive I met with at a rival network really liked it, but she started telling me about what they already had in production. She started telling me about budget, where she was in the company, like in terms of how many projects she got to present this year. And so the level of her explanations was so specific that I knew she wasn't saying no, because she didn't like the project. And so I went to a Writers Guild event like later that evening, and one of my friends was on a panel. He was speaking like at the NAACP, they have the NAACP Image Awards. And I was like, hey, Charles, I just got the best no ever. And he was like, really? Why? And I was like, I told him, and he picked up the phone right there and he called Michael Goldstein, who's one of our producers. And Michael was actually in Ireland. They were doing a project in Ireland at the time. And he said, he's like, Michael's going to get in touch with you. And then COVID happened and I didn't hear from Michael. So I didn't know what was happening. And I just remember Charles saying, Michael's a good guy. And so like 3 or 4 months later, Michael, as soon as he came back from Ireland, got in touch with me. And at that point, 2 networks, Hallmark and the other network, were really interested in it. And it was in the middle of COVID. And so there were these restrictions. And so then there was a regime change at Hallmark. And I remember like, hey, Michael, they got a Black CEO at Hallmark now. They might do inclusive storytelling. You think they want it? He was like, let's just, this is how it's going to happen. Like, let's just calm down. Let's just wait. And when it happens, it'll go really, really fast. It'll be slow until it gets really, really fast. And I just trusted the process. And this project I sold with just a 2-page treatment. It wasn't a movie, which I think works in Hallmark's favor because they have very clear and specific dictates for what they want in a film. So I just did that. And then once it started, oh, and then like both networks are going back and forth. And then once Hallmark got it, the other exec was like, I think we're going to regret this one. So I hope she does in the best possible way. And then we found out in March, I started meeting with the Hallmark execs. And then in April, May, I went to draft. I wrote it in 3 weeks. Then in June, they were like, we want to greenlight this project. And it was, some projects take, 2 years. The development process could be really long. And they were like, hey, we really like it. We have literally 3 weeks before we can get this to anybody in casting. So we'd like to bring in someone we work with all the time who really knows the Hallmark system and have him just take a look at it and restructure some scenes. And so the writer in me was terrified because in film school, I had learned that if there's another writer that gets on your project, they will screw it up. They will try to take it over. And I knew I just had to trust the process. And then Chris had a meeting with the producers, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. And then when I got it back, I just wanted to speak to him because it was just great. It was my story. He just literally rearranged some scenes. And that taught me so much about what Hallmark wanted, just the arrangement of scenes, because Chris speaks development. He just speaks development exec really, really well. And so although development execs speak English, doesn't always mean you understand what they're saying. And he was able to interpret that for me and tell me, and it was just really great. And so I did the second rewrite, but he was there if I needed him. And he was like, I think you got it. And then we cast and we started shooting, and it was really fast. So some people have complained. I got some people online like, hey, they didn't promote this. And it was like the film was literally done 3 days before it aired. Like this was a real fast process.
Got it. So do you want to talk at all about your philosophy of inclusive storytelling and then where allies fit into that?
Yes, because I think that would be a great way to introduce Mr. Say over here. So inclusive story, often you'll hear diversity and inclusion together, and they're very different things. Diversity assumes one main center that things diverge from, divert, a division. And I just fundamentally don't agree with that. My experience is not a diversion from anybody else's experience. I don't capitalize, like I don't own all experiences either, but there's an inclusiveness where it's like all stories are considered equal. So if I were to give a practical example, in the 1990s, so I know some of you students were like born in 2000, so you might not have ever seen these shows, but you're aware of them in the pop culture. So Friends is an incredibly popular show. It's about 6 friends in New York City. About 2 or 3 years before Friends, there was a show called Living Single. Living Single was actually first, and it was about 6 friends in New York City and Brooklyn. Now, Living Single was incredibly popular on the Fox network, and that model was actually copied for Friends. But when Friends hit the air on NBC, people began assuming that Friends was the definitive show about 6 friends. So that would be diversity, seeing Friends and seeing Living Single as an offshoot. Inclusivity is understanding that you can have 6 friends in Brooklyn and you can have 6 friends in New York, and both experiences are valid and both experiences are part of the American pop culture experience that should be shared, that we can learn from, and that we can enjoy.
And so how would you say, so in Chris's case, how would you say it worked to have an ally that understood what you were trying to do?
Well, I mean, I think Chris could speak specifically to that. I mean, but it's in what I said, like I was terrified because I had been taught to be terrified. And when you approached me about this, Sharon, I was like, Chris has to be there, because we need to understand, even if it wasn't a situation of inclusion, just in terms of writing, and so many people who want to be writers, we learn to collaborate and not be combative. And I think we can learn to be combative because we can hear fearful thoughts all the time without allowing to see what's actually going to happen when you collaborate with another writer. And filmmaking, television, it's all a collaborative medium, but there are misrepresentations where we think it's about the individual. And whenever we think it's about the individual, things go awry. So again, like I said, Chris really respected the project. He really respected the script. And he literally just changed structure to actually like, oh, that's what they wanted. Like, he just spoke executive speak, and he just was very respectful. And we, like I said, we had a great collaboration.
Chris, you want to say anything about what you tried to do for the script?
Sure. So first off, I just want to mention that it's not a big deal, but I'm not with Hallmark in any formal way.
Yeah.
I'm hired just like Monique was. I just happen to get hired frequently because I work with the producers very often. I work with the producers that produced Monique's movie. And I call it Monique's movie because I do think it's her story, and I do think she did more than the lion's share of the work on it. Even though I have my name's on the title, or at least they're written by credit. But I think that that's a whole other story that gets into the guild, and you don't want to get into that. But as far as this story goes, the moment I saw or was called to take a look at the script and see if I could help out, the thing that is important to understand about Hallmark and most television networks in general is that they work, they don't do a lot of work until the very end. And then they do a lot of work very quickly. And so it helps a network like Hallmark to have people that understand the brands and what the brands sort of can't not do. It's a terrible double negative, but there's certain things that they have to achieve in order for the movie to not only be completed, but to wind up on the air. Because if it doesn't accomplish those things, they have no reason to run it, because it doesn't fit into what their mandate is. And the mandate at Hallmark is very, very specific. And we were joking before everybody got on the line that there's no kiss until the last scene. That is the mandate. It just is, which means that and the way that very simple mandate filters into every story on Hallmark is there's a high degree of innocence in all of the characters, more so than you would find in a lot of other movies. And it's basically, the narrative is paved in good intentions. Nobody in a Hallmark script is really out to do anybody any harm. They kind of want everybody to do have the best outcomes they can, which is very different than most of the screenwriting that people learn how to do. And I had a very steep learning curve on my first Hallmark job. And so when I read Monique's script, I felt like she just hasn't been through the learning curve of Hallmark specifically. She's obviously a screenwriter. She's obviously a very talented narrative writer, and her dialogue was fantastic, and the culture and the sort of the mise en scène of the entire script was spot on. It's just that it didn't fit into the Hallmark brand. As somebody who understands that, or has understood it because I've worked for them or with them for the last 10 years, it just wasn't that tough to take everything that she had, all the wonderful characters that she had, the dynamic of between the characters, and just kind of like hammer it into what Hallmark needed. And whether it made it a better script is really not the point, to be honest with you, because if we're all in the world of production, you have to meet certain production standards, and that's a lesson that's hard learned from lots of different aspects of this business, from half-hour comedy writing to 2-hour feature writing. But what I did was I respected what she did. I paid particular attention to the scenes that without necessarily asking her, which I could have done, but I was in a hurry as well, what I sensed were the most personal to her. I think I got most of that right. I'm not sure, but I just did not want the things that I felt like she would find, not only that she was most proud of, but that she really, really deeply wanted in the story. I wanted to keep them in there. I wanted to make them work in a way that Hallmark would greenlight. And that was really all I wanted to do, was make Monique's story fit into what Hallmark was asking me to do.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about the, because we've talked about this, the meeting with the producers and what they told you before and how that helped make our process of working together collaborative?
Yeah, it was a really deep conversation. I haven't really been involved in a production or I haven't really been involved in a production at Hallmark or elsewhere that was about African-American characters or an African-American location like Harlem. And I really didn't feel the confidence to kind of take over Monique's voice in any way. Like I actually didn't want to do it because I didn't think it was fair to the project, or it just didn't seem appropriate to me. But the head producer, Charles Murray, the executive producer on the project, said very simply, like, write what you know, write the characters that you know, write who you are and your voice. I come from two very neurotic Jewish parents, and I just felt like if I write that sense of humor, and at the times I needed to overwrite the dialogue, if I write the relationships that I already understand that aren't necessarily the exact ones that Monique had laid out, and I didn't, as he said it, try to write dialogue, or dialect is the way he put it, to steer away from that, then we'd be okay. And Monique would come in and rewrite the dialogue or dialect in the ways that she thought appropriate. And that's what I did. It was very freeing, because all it meant was I could write from my own personal experience. I wouldn't try to write from somebody else's, which I didn't want to do. And that there was going to be plenty of time for Monique to make it as authentic and as she wanted to in the way that she wanted to do it. And I thought that was I don't know, Monique, did you think that was
I did.
great advice? And it was
Yeah.
advice that allowed me to kind of, you can imagine, I just didn't have to try hard doing something I didn't know how to do.
And I think I really wanted you here because I think that there's a misnomer again that there's only one writer, even when it's not credited. I sent Sharon an article earlier today, and we've also discussed it yesterday. The WGA actually, by 73% margin, overwhelmingly had made a decision that there's now going to be an additional writer's credit, because very rarely when you see one writer as written by, is it just that one writer? Because like Chris says, like, they bring in other writers. And I'm grateful that Hallmark is ahead of the curve, because if it was me, it's wonderful that they're just like, we're just going to credit everyone. So
there's I don't know the guild rules as well as I should. I'm not as a frequent participant in guild activities, negotiations, and meetings as I ought to be. But I'm a big believer in how the guild votes as a group and as a block. And the rule for a very long time has been, if you contribute more than 50% to changes that equal more than 50% difference, that's one way to put it. Like if you've worked on the script and changed it at least 50%, you get dual writing credit. If you don't, you get no credit. So that the latter part of that is it's been a long time coming for them to change that. So you get what's now called an additional writing credit, I assume. But I still am a big believer in not only getting credit if you've rewritten something over, more than 50%, but the process that comes after that, which is arbitration, which we could speak about, but I don't know if it's very interesting. But basically,
I just want to be just a little bit respectful of time, because it's almost 4:30. But we were going to show one scene from the film, and then have Monique share a little bit what she wanted to do with that scene, and then also give the audience a chance to ask any questions about that specific scene, if that would be okay.
Great. I love it.
All right, let's do it here. All right, I think I have it queued up. I apologize, y'all. There is gardening going on right outside. Can y'all hear that or no? A little bit? Nope. Okay, I hope we're okay. All right, let me go ahead. All right. Can y'all see my screen? Okay, so I think this is the scene. That was the scene that you wanted to share, Monique. What can you share with us about why you chose that scene?
Oh, that scene is really important to me. It's been consistently important to me through like 5 or 6 different drafts, even in that short amount of time, because I knew that if this is kind of a landmark for Hallmark to do culturally specific films. And one of the things I knew going into it is that the audience has to trust us. And for those of us who are African-American, we know that there are 2 ways that kind of people trust. It's potato salad. Like if you go, it's like there's a cookout, and who brings a potato salad and who brings the mac and cheese. And if you don't trust the person bringing the potato salad or mac and cheese, then they're not involved, they're not included. So for me, I wanted to take what you'll see like on social media, like a meme, that's something that's really, really important to us, and bring it in so that the audience subconsciously is like, oh, I can trust this film. I can trust this voice. I am where I'm supposed to be. And I've gotten comments like, as soon as they saw her say, you're going to have the mac and cheese recipe, it was like, did she have 4? She better have 4 things, different types of mac and cheese. And when they saw it, they were like, yes. Like, I mean, people have been writing me that. So that was really important. It's also really important in the African-American community for the most part, especially from the Southern tradition. Grandmas are very important, as they are in many communities. And the grandmother-grandchild relationship is really special. And this has 3 generations of women. And it's also, it's a rites of passage scene for our protagonist, our hero, Jasmine, where she has gone through a few things. And to be invited into this process means that she has gone through rites of passage. It also has Jasmine's nickname, which is Baby Girl. This is the 20th anniversary of R&B singer Aaliyah's passing. And I wanted to honor Aaliyah. She's like our forever princess. So Jasmine's nickname is Baby Girl, and that's like an Easter egg in honor to Aaliyah. So it's all of that. Like, that's why I just love this particular scene.
I wondered if there are any questions or comments. I see Sherry sent you a big heart. Are there any questions or comments on the scene before we move on?
I'll just say, Monique, just seeing that scene, it does make you feel at home. And it is such an important part of our traditions and our community. And so anytime I see somebody reflect that back, I was so appreciative. So thank you for that, Monique.
I think one of the things, Monique, that you had mentioned is that, everybody's been through like a really hard time. And you just wanted to create something that would feel good, right? Did you call it a balm for the soul or something?
Yeah, it's a balm. Like, I created this in the middle of the pandemic, like I said, April, May, and I just knew we'd be coming out of it, and I just wanted it to be a balm. I just wanted it to be warm. So every time I talk about it, like, hey, there's a warm film. Oh, this is a warm, fuzzy film. Because I mean, we've seen a lot just collectively. And the kitchen is a way for us to feel warm. So that's another reason I wanted to show the scene. And that scene was really important to me, because food speaks to us across any ethnicity. We understand being in the kitchen and the warmth that brings. So that was another reason that was really important. I see Nancy talked about the nod to marriage equality. There was actually a marriage equality, they weren't cast that way, but I actually wrote a couple for marriage equality. It just was cast differently. So I'm really grateful that we made several nods to that. And if you see in the opening scene, Marsha P. Johnson is one of the murals, and on the magnet, that was just really important to us to reflect that inclusion.
So are there any other questions on the scene? If not, they were going to share some advice that they had for people that were interested in this as a career. All right, so seeing none, and we'll have time for Q&A then after we get through the advice section. But what advice, based on your journey to this point, and also if you could share a little bit more about your journey to this point, but what advice would you have for people who are thinking about this as a career?
Chris, go first, and please include your background of how you got here.
Well, do you mean career in Hallmark movies or career in movies in general?
However you define it, right? What do you mean?
Yeah, career in entertainment, career in writing, whatever.
I guess so my background is not, I didn't study film in school, and I didn't actually start writing in any serious way until I was about 30 or 31. And I started in a very different genre, and I've written in lots of different genres. I had a little bit of luck when I was very young, getting something purchased, which created the opportunity to get a manager and an agent and all those things. The ground has shifted a lot in the last few years. I don't know if I can actually speak to advice for young people trying to get into writing or the entertainment business, except that the only thing that seems to matter across, at this point, generations is authenticity. You can try and write something that's genre specific. You can try and write something that seems like the best sci-fi idea in the world. You can try and write a horror movie that you think the antagonist has never been seen before. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is if you're writing from your, not necessarily just your experience, but your, like, it doesn't have to have happened to you, but the relationship experience that you're portraying in your story. It has to be real. If it's not, we'll see right through, everyone sees right through it, including the first reader of the first page. So if you want to get a start, write a lot, be ready to fail in your writing, and be ready to fail in your attempts to, you know, take every single step of the way of the journey, from getting representation to getting your first meeting with a producer. Like, that stuff can take forever, but just keep writing. You're at this point in my life, when I look back, and I don't even know where the first script I ever wrote is, but if it's on a computer somewhere in my basement and I looked at it, I'd be ashamed, and that's fine. That's how it should be. I'm ashamed of the last script that I wrote. If you're trying to develop and grow as a creative person and get a job in this business, you need to have perseverance, and you need to write what you know. And you know so much that never gets old. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now, and I'm still writing from what I know. And I haven't really gone over anything so far. Because heck, you just keep living, right? So you got another year behind you, write about that. That's my advice, if that's any good. I will say lastly, I'm sorry, one more thing. Use the people you know. They're always willing to help you, and nobody really resents it. So if you have friends in the business, have those coffees, ask them to tell you who they know, meet with those people, introductory emails, because that's how this business gets done. It does not get done from cold calling, and that'll frustrate you for the rest of your life. Talk to people you know, make friends, those relationships come around. I made friends with Monique. I hope we get to work together again. You never know. So that's all I got.
Okay. I wanted to say, as a screenwriting professor, Chris, your advice of coming to it late is something that I always encourage my students to do. Film is a powerful medium, and so many people just want to, you know, be filmmakers. And there's a development process for story, for understanding story. There's a development process for understanding the psychology of characters and the sociology of the community that is sometimes missing when people are writing, because they just see the visual image and they don't understand the core. What we do is transmitting emotion visually, and if you don't understand emotion, if you don't have lived experiences, it's really hard to have people journey with you on compelling stories.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know people want to be you want to go to school for film, and it's great, but it's okay if you go for something else and then come to film. A lot of times I think that what you want out of life differs at each stage of your life. And I don't think anything is wasted. So I say get as much experience as you can. And, you know, like you said, I literally, when you hear a no, it's just, okay, what exactly is this no? I mean, it literally turned to be a yes from a 2-page treatment. It wasn't an entire script. So and I was literally just, you know, talking to one of my friends. That was just a call. Like, I've known him for a really long time, and that was the particular call. So and in terms of like audience, it's like, you know, kind of like what Chris said, he started out in a completely different genre. I think that one of the things that when I first came out of film school, I had offers to have projects at MGM, and I was like, no, I was like holding out because I thought it should look a particular way, because people would, you know, there was a cachet to certain places or certain talent, and I was turning down certain talent, and they wanted to make some films of mine. And I didn't understand the most important thing is the credit, like get the credit. The audience will find you. Don't think, oh, this particular outlet is better than this particular outlet. Just get the credit. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, the thing that writers and directors frequently, young, ambitious, new writers and directors frequently forget is that go ahead and look at the credits for actors. Take a look, because the stuff that they not only did when they were starting out, but continue to do is not the stuff that they tend to be most proud of. the fact of the matter is you're trying to get a job in entertainment. You know, you might be trying to change the world with your art, and that's totally noble and amazing, and go for it. But in the meantime, you're trying to get a job in entertainment. So when the work comes up, take it, no matter what it looks like, because you will learn so much. I've learned more from working with producers and people like Monique on Hallmark movies about how to write my own other projects, which might be more indie or a little bit more cable-y or a little mean-spirited or whatever the genre of the week is. But you learn how to respect your audience. And if you do not respect your audience is not interested in what you're doing. You have to take that in consideration. I think you have to take that in consideration first. You're working with the memories and the stuff of life. Those are your musical notes. And if you're not going to use the ones that people can sympathize with and feel and understand, and you're just making them up out of whole cloth, you're going to see right through it, and they're not going to believe in you or believe in what you've done.
So I want to turn it over to Jocelyn. Jocelyn is gonna handling the Q&A. I should introduce you. So this is Jocelyn Wynn. She is with Black Collegians at SMC. She also was the wonderful person who was with our at the Center for Media and Design. So I miss her greatly. But so Jocelyn is going to be handling the Q&A, and then also you can write your questions in the chat. She has some backup questions. Also, you can also raise your hand if you have a question. So I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you, Jocelyn.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Monique. Hi, Christopher. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate this. Personally, I know Monique from CMD, and I'm a big fan. I'm really happy about what you've done. And I did have a couple questions that I have prepared just in case. And I'm speaking mostly from a student standpoint because I support students at the college, specifically African-American students. And so because this is, obviously the film itself was geared towards African-American cast. I do want to know some things that I think our students would be asking. And that would be like, what kind of resources, books, films, podcasts, screenplays, what are the things that you would suggest students who are thinking to go into film specifically or into screenwriting even? What do you suggest that they kind of consume now to prepare themselves for that kind of career?
Well, one of my favorite assignments after people, like there are basic screenwriting books that people know about, but you'll hear different terminology. And one of my favorite things that I recommend, even when I do script consulting work, private script consulting work, is I tell people to take a film that they really like and write what they see, like do the scene headings, like get a screenplay formatting thing and write it, because you just learn so much about formatting and structure from that. I also I also ask people to, if there's a film that you really love, take it and then change it to what you see. So I won the Film Independent Writers Lab because Billy Wilder is my favorite filmmaker of all time. I love Billy Wilder. He did Sunset Boulevard, he did Sabrina, he did Some Like It Hot, he wrote across genre, he has this amazing voice. And I watched Sabrina with Audrey Hepburn and William Holden and Cary Grant, and I was like, what if that happened in Harlem? I do a lot of things in Harlem. And so I named it Epiphany, and I took that and I adapted it, and I won a screenwriting award. So I was like, oh, this is a model, this works. And I actually learned formatting, because a lot of times you can read books, but it was kind of like I said, that because Chris has been working with the producers for various projects over the last decade, he understood their speak. So sometimes you can read a book, but that doesn't translate into you making it very practical for you. So for me, the process of taking a movie that you love, and if it's scene by scene, how would you do that scene differently? Just so that you can learn pacing, you can learn rhythm, you can learn format, you can learn what act breaks really look like in a very practical sense.
Chris, how about you?
So two things, I guess. One is know the difference between the movie you say you like the most and the movie you've watched the most. Focus on the movie you've watched the most, because that maybe you're not as proud of it as the other choice that you made that's independent on the Criterion Collection, but the movie you've seen the most is your favorite movie. And then figure out why. And that's probably pretty close to what you should be writing in your free time. And the other thing is read Story by McKee. It's like a punchline in adaptation. And it's a punchline for a lot of people, but that guy knows story. And if you do not get story the way that musicians understand, musical theory, it's really, really, really hard to write a screenplay. It's another language, and it helps to know from the earliest stories that we have recorded to the most recent that have been made into podcasts or whatever the new medium is. They're all the same. They're
I was going to say, I actually read a Story by McKee after I write every project. I didn't have it on this time because we were on a deadline, but like,
sure.
I
No,
just kind of reread it after so I just know it. It's just one of those things that you just,
it's
that
like
I go
a
back to
Bible.
over and
I mean,
over. It is.
There's so much in there. You can't absorb it all in one go, but just read it again next year, read it again the year after that. It is the Bible of storytelling, and not screenwriting, storytelling.
Storytelling.
That's great. So Lynn wrote a question in the chat. As a Hallmark writer, how do you structure a story with no antagonist to overcome?
So, I mean, you want me to take this one?
Go ahead, yeah.
Sorry. The easiest way to look at a Hallmark movie is it's not man or woman versus man or woman or versus nature. It's man or woman. And in Hallmark, it's usually woman versus herself. So she comes to the story with a pre-existing problem that it's the arc or the journey of the story to, sort of overcome and become a better person. She has another person in that story who's a love interest. And that love interest is also sort of a functional antagonist because they're not supposed to get together until this kiss at the last scene. But this is a very specific formula. There are different formulas for every different media, channel that has their own brand. But in this one, it's a woman versus herself, in most cases. And that's enough of an antagonist. In fact, it's usually in every narrative. And so in Hallmark, they just really, that's the one they focus on as principle. But yeah.
Wow, great. Monique, did you have anything to add on that?
Just as it's a woman versus herself, it's externalized through different things. So a lot of times it's externalized through work. That's the opposition. So I just want to just make it clear, like with screenwriting, you have to make sure it's visual. So if she's against herself, how do you show what herself is so that there's that separation? And it's just adding on to what Chris has said.
Yeah.
And that was, I feel like that came out myself when I was watching the film. Especially as a woman, I'm a single woman, I work, I have to take care of myself. And I think as Black women, that's a very common theme for a lot of Black women of my age. I'm in my 40s, and my sisters, we were all watching it at the same time. We all live in different areas of the country, and we were watching the movie at the same time. And we were like, oh my God, that is my life. Because a lot of us felt that same pressure of like, you don't know how to balance, your personal life, you love your family, but it's a little too much when you already got stuff on your plate from work. So I think that was it really translated over to the film very well. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So in the chat, someone's asking, they want to follow up on what Chris said about talking to friends in the industry. How do you go about making these friends? This person moved from LA to LA from the UK and doesn't have the slightest clue on how to meet people in the entertainment industry.
I have some really bad jokes about that I'm not going to say. You got to join, you take a shot, right, Monique? Like,
yeah,
classes, join a group on social media, get talking to people any way you can.
Join Film Independent, and again, if it's something that you find, what do you enjoy, right? And you'll find people doing what you enjoy. Volunteer a lot. If it's a festival coming up, be a volunteer at a festival, because you'll find people of like minds as you. And I think that that's really important, the distinction between what you say and what you actually watch, and going for the love, because it gets tough, it gets hard. And if you're just going for some heady notion of what you think it's right, it's easy to just say, and get frustrated and get angry. And even if you get frustrated and angry, if it's something you love, the love will push you through.
Yeah, the other thing to remember is if you're in LA now, you probably know a lot of people in the business that aren't necessarily say, like, everybody at the coffee shop is in the business. Like, everyone's trying to do it in some way or another. Be patient. You'll meet them. You know, your new friends will probably have some, you know, ancillary involvement with the movie business. It happens. You just got to be patient. It always happens.
Thank you for that. So Marla, hi Marla. I didn't see her in here, but Marla's asking, Monique, did you have any voice in the casting? She may have missed that a little bit. I don't think
I was pleasantly surprised by Hallmark. Hallmark came back with names for Mama Belle and Jasmine, and they had Olivia Washington and they had Tina Lifford, and I was just over the moon. Olivia Washington, I saw her in The Butler, but I just love the way she looks. She looks like a regular woman. She just, her whole way of being, she's not a stick. She looks like a woman. She's beautiful. And I really, really, really like that. In terms of our community, there can be light skin versus dark skin. And I really love that she is brown skin and she looks like a woman. So I didn't have any control over that, but I was very pleasantly just excited by who Hallmark casting did. And the rest was the director. He worked with I think the majority of the talent he worked with before, and he just brought in his actors.
Oh, I see. Okay.
With the exception of me and my cameo, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which was great. So I'll go to a question that I have, since I don't see something else in the chat. I'm a writer myself, but I write memoir. So I just finished the first draft of my first memoir. Scared as heck to, put it out there, because like you were talking about the authenticity, sometimes that's pretty scary to do. During the process of me writing, though, obviously the writer's block gets crazy. When the story is constantly in your head and you're constantly trying to fix problems in it, and it takes over so much space in your head, how do you manage that? And what does your support group look like? Like the people around you who are able to kind of help you get through that? Because that's a tough thing for me as a writer, is that getting out of the work itself sometimes and giving myself time to think about other things,
Chris, you want to go?
You should go.
I just, I don't know. I mean, I just think sometimes we have to sit with the discomfort of what writing is. Like, it's not always going to be comfortable. And once you sit with discomfort, you become more comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's when a lot of the good stuff comes out. I also find ways to engage in repetitive non-thinking behavior. Like for me, I work out a lot, but it could be needlepoint. It's like that, why the ideas come to us in the shower. And I know we're like running out of time. It's like when you are not focusing on the writing or the answers come. But yeah, I really encourage people, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's just part of what it is to be an artist.
And it's really wise. It's also, you have to get comfortable with knowing that with the steps that it takes to get better, which means sharing your work, which is Monique's point. If you have to feel uncomfortable with the feedback you're going to get, everyone means it with love. Don't be so attached to the work that you do that it becomes your character. It's the screenplay and you are two different things, or the memoir and you are two different things.
So we only have a few more minutes. Sharon, do you want me to go ahead and ask these last two questions that are in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, if the speakers are willing to stay a little bit, and the audience wants to stay, I think we could stay a few more minutes.
Okay, great. So, Monique, how close did the final product resemble what you first imagined it would look like?
Here's the amazing thing about writing for a brand, is that no matter who comes after you, it's going to be the Hallmark brand. So I took solace in understanding that it doesn't matter what the director does. Like, they can do things. Ultimately, it's going to be, there might be little changes, but once Hallmark approves of something and that's the Hallmark brand, that's what I'm going to see. So I take solace in that.
So where's your favorite place to write at? And what's the place that inspires you to write?
And then before that, I was just going to say, so you had a lot of kissing that you had to cut from your original script, because there were so many points there. I'm like, okay, they're gonna kiss that, because
That's part of it,
I
though. That's
watched
to
a
make
lot
you.
of Hallmark.
That's the
so I was
yearning to make
like,
you want them to kiss. That's part of it.
yes,
It's
Yeah.
the missed
okay.
kisses. It's like, where's the chemistry? Because we have to fall in love with these characters. That's part of the innocence, where so much of Jasmine is like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with this guy. I don't even know it. And Caleb, he's Mr. Stay Ready. Like, he's sugar free. You have to get ready. You just stay ready.
I think the magic of the Hallmark philosophy with regard to that is, if you imagine that the characters did kiss very early on in the movie, the entire movie would be very different, because they're grown-ups. So they're not just kissing. So we then get into a story that's about all kinds of other things. Whereas this way, they don't have to worry about it. It's just like out of sight, out of mind. Let's wait till the end and then they can kiss then. It's like teen romance in a lovely kind of way, you know?
So favorite places to write, either of you or both of you? And what place inspired, are there places that inspire you to write?
I just have to write. So I just, when you have to do it, it's like, is there a favorite place to brush your teeth? Like, you just.
Hilarious. Yeah, it's a job, everybody. Working out is a similar job. Just get used to doing it, like on the regular, because you'll write more if you do it every day for a certain amount of time than if you wait to be inspired by going to the lake or something. Then go see the lake, for crying out loud. Enjoy yourself.
That's great advice.
Are there any other students who have a question that you haven't gotten a chance to ask?
I have a question.
Sure.
What's next, Monique?
Oh, that's a perfect question.
We'll see. I'm actually in talks right now. I have some contract negotiations to direct my first documentary feature. So I'll know shortly. I'm really excited. It's called it's different, but I think it's still a part of me. It's called Birthing Justice. And some of you may be, there's actually an article that was just in the New York Times today, the producer sent me, about how difficult it is for Black women to successfully give birth in this country. So Judge Hatchett is one. She lost her daughter-in-law at Cedars-Sinai, one of the best hospitals in the country. She gave birth and then she passed away a few hours later. And this is a problem. So it's not focused on the problem, though. It's focused on solutions. That's why it's called Birthing Justice. So it's the producers, they did another documentary called Push Out last year. And so that would be next. So we'll see how that goes.
Wow, I look forward to it.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
How about for you, Chris? Is there something coming up? Did I scare you?
Oh, I wasn't expecting it. I think started a partnership with a neighbor of mine. Speaking of knowing people, you never know. I had found a very interesting story in a small publication about sort of one of the very early gay rights organizations in Los Angeles is called the Mattachine Society, and they're headquartered about 4 blocks from my house. I read a really interesting article about this guy named Dale Jennings, who was the first person to challenge a lewd and vagrancy charge, which is the way that they used to round up homosexuals in LA and whatever, scare the heck out of them. I am a straight married man, but I talked to my neighbor about it, and he's also a writer, and he was like, I would love to do that with you. So I'm reaching sort of like, I didn't feel like I could write that story with any sense of authenticity either, but I could help with the narrative structure of it. And so we're hopefully going to work on that together.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So just writing what's interesting.
That sounds good. Sounds really good. I'm looking forward to both of your projects. I think everyone is. So Sharon, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, there was one thing that Monique had mentioned in a conversation that I just want to make sure students know. So there's the concept of the hero's journey, right? And she had talked about the main character from the film being on a journey, and part of the journey is how you're changed by the journey, right? So you have there's several stages of the journey that's part of the arc of a lot of popular content, Dan Harmon talks about this and all, you know, as his, you know, the story cycle and that kind of thing. But I was wondering just if, is there a specific article that you recommend about the hero's journey that you think people should read, or
Well, in my when I teach beginning screenwriting, film 20, we use The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. And I recommend everyone understand that, because he was a Disney exec when he wrote it, and it's actually the Disney model. And you can hate Disney, but Disney controls a lot of how we perceive the story. And Jasmine, that the scene that we saw today is the reward in that 12-page writer's journey. So I think in addition, I love McKee. Chris, I haven't found my students could get through McKee in a semester long class. So
It's a really dense book. I think you're right about Vogler's book too. It's like, it's not only, it's simpler, it's really visual as well. It's like a really wonderful thing to be able to digest and understand.
So and what I do is like those books, if again, I don't even have to have written anything. If there's a movie that I love, I just start applying those concepts to the movie that I love. If I can understand that structure through that. So I would recommend you do that. Like, you don't have to have something written to start understanding structure.
No.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Let's give a round of applause to our guest speakers, but also for the film that they've created.
Yay! Thank you.
And then if you have not taken screenwriting classes at SMC, we do have some fantastic screenwriting classes. So check those out. Those are the film classes. And do you want to say anything about Black Collegians, Jocelyn, in case anybody would need to know more about Black Collegians?
We're going to start enrolling, doing some early enrollment in December for spring. Obviously, our program is for anyone, but we mainly have African-American students. I'm here to support them and get them through whatever their academic goals are. So if you know anyone who is an SMC student or planning to be an SMC student in spring, have them look at our webpage and go ahead and email our email address, and I'll be happy to reach back out to them and get them all started with Black Legions.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'll stick around in case anyone needs to stick around, but otherwise, I appreciate you spending the afternoon with us. When is the replay? If they want to watch the replay on the Hallmark channel, do you guys know it's Sunday?
It's Friday. It's
Friday.
The 19th. Yeah, it's going to be the first one. And I think it's going to be on the 23rd as well. And then, yeah. And it's also, it should be on the Hallmark app right now, right? Yes. I've been all over Twitter, Chris. Like, this is part of the work.
It's good. No, it's going to be on a lot. So it's good for you.
All right. So tell all your friends and family to watch, please. All right,
guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, students, for coming.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah,
That was fun.
wasn't it awesome? It's not every day you get to talk to screenwriters. So I think
Yeah,
it's awesome.
I really like that.
I'm glad you were here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get to my homework.
All right. Yeah, good. No worries.
Okay.
I apologize, Lynn. I forgot to throw up the sign-in sheet.
Oh, it's okay. I was here. I saw who was here. And I didn't realize you were going to record it. So it almost is moot because the assignment, they have to be clear that they read it, or watched it. So.
Yeah, I was thinking I'm going to go back and look at the recording and look at who was here. And then I could fill out I could just create a list for people.
But you made a recording, so we can post the link to the recording and it can be moot then,
Oh, I see. So that other people could come. Kamiko, Did you have a question, Kamiko?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much for doing this. And I just wanted to know how can students get a recording of this?
Oh, so send me an email and then I can share out the, what, I should probably email, because you registered to be here. Maybe I'll just email the link to the recording to everyone who registered for the event, because then you can have it. It'll just be a link to the Zoom recording unless we decide to download it and put it on YouTube, but at least you'll have the Zoom recording link.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you too. Have a great
All
night.
right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Michelle, for being here too. It's nice to see you again.
Well, thank you. And then this is my friend Gail Johnson. She works over at the Broad Stage. So yeah, it was fantastic. A wonderful experience.
Here, let me
And
pause the recording just because I realize I'm still recording.
Okay.
Sorry.